What up, guys? Welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We took a week off last week for Thanksgiving. Many of you guys probably noticed it. We were both traveling to see family, and it was our first one off since 2018. We've done an episode every week, single week. So, with that said, Thanksgiving just happened. We're in the holiday season. I figured we would start off or do a podcast this week with 12 things that I'm thankful for. So, this is obviously not a comprehensive list. I couldn't possibly put everything that I'm thankful for on one podcast, but there are 12 things that maybe I'll get you to think about, just give you some ideas to chew on. And some of them are going to be counterintuitive things to be thankful for. So we'll get into the list here shortly with 12 things that the Chewster is thankful for. Appreciate you guys for being with us this week. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Athletic, ATHLETHC. These are the microdose THC mints that come with other cannabinoids to produce an effect to support you, whether that's recovery, getting into flow state, getting ready for exercise, that kind of thing. They have three different products currently. They have Flow, Rebound, and Power, which obviously you could think about what those could be used for. And you can also get a sample pack that'll have a little bit of all of them in, and you can try it out and see which ones you like. You've used the products off and on for, I guess it's probably been almost a year now. I think we started using them back in January of last year, somewhere around there.
Yep.
And so again, cool product. It's not going to make you feel buzzy or crazy. It's not a massive dose of THC that's going to make you feel like you're, ate too many brownies or anything like that. It's just very mild, but it can be very useful. And again, if you guys want to check them out, go to their website at ATHLETHC.com to save 10% off the order with Jiu-Jitsu 10. Also, thanks to our buddies over at Epic Roll for supporting the podcast. If you guys want to check them out, you can go to their website at epicrollbjj.com. They had a ton of great gear and merch available, everything from no-gi gear to gis and rash guards, and I said no-gi gear, and T-shirts and everything else. They also do custom orders for gyms and academies, and so if you're someone that wants to get some special gear made for your guys, some premium gear, you can check out their offers there. I get my gym stuff made through Epic Roll currently with my my gis and my rash guards because they do such a good job. Fairly affordable, good quality stuff, good customer service. And so again, I like all that. And again, if you guys want to check them out, go to epicrollbjj.com. And if you want to buy anything on their website, you can save 20% with the Jiu-Jitsu code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. Also, if you guys want to check out Charlotte's Web, they are one of the OGs in the CBD space. You can check them out. I've used their products off and on for years. It's great. I find it great for sort of the recovery side of things. That's what I tend to find it. There's a lot of different benefits that people talk about. You can actually go on their website and find more information about that. But again, for me, it's more of a recovery tool. And as I get older, everything is about trying to figure out more and more ways to recover. You see people getting into supplementation and hormone treatments and everything else. And all of this is just a response to your body's not recovering is like it used to. And so you try to find more and more ways to do that. And it's one of the tools in the toolbox. And if you guys want to check them out, you can go to their website at charlottesweb.com along with CBD stuff. They also have everything from CBN products to also functional mushroom products like reishi, lion's mane, and other options. And again, all those are designed to support you in different functions from cognitive health and brain function to stress management. And if you guys want to check out their stuff and save 30%, Chewjitsu30 is the code for 30% off the order at charlottesweb.com. If you guys want to support the podcast directly, become a Patreon member. And again, all of you guys that are current Patreon members, we do appreciate you guys. And if you guys want to check out the perks that we offer, you can go to the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast to support the podcast directly. And if you guys want to get my daily email that this podcast is based on, you can get that by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join. And when you join up, you will get access to a guide that I give away called Focus Jiu-Jitsu, both an ebook version, PDF, and also a video, depending if you don't want to read or not. And it goes through some different strategies on how to get more focus and more improvement with your training. And then I send my daily email afterwards, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Also, guys, just letting you know, because I know we don't talk about it much here, but Eugene is he's a physical therapist for hire. And so for any of you guys that are banged up, broken, sore, whatever, if you would like to get the help of the guy who's helped me out a ton with my body over the last decade plus, then he has a service that you can sort of get a consultation, everything with him. He is the guy that basically is the go-to guy for all the guys in our gym. He's helped me out numerous times before my MMA fights, before competitions where I've got something jacked up, and he, gives me exercises to either work around it or fix it. And I think probably in a couple of cases, has helped me avoid having to go under the knife because I was able to address some of the imbalances ahead of time before they got too far out of whack, right? Because a lot of times, what do? We have something that's sore, we're feeling banged up, whatever, and we just kind of ignore it, throw some tape on it, wear a knee brace, take some ibuprofen, whatever we got to do to work around it. We kind of ignore it. We never address it. And then eventually it gets really bad. And then we have to quit or stop for a while or have
Yeah.
surgery. Opposed to, hey, here is a really short action plan of a few things you can do every day to address that and hopefully get over that situation. Eugene, if they want to get more information, where should they go, sir?
Yeah, you can reach out to Jiu-Jitsu Therapist at gmail.com or go to my website, jujitsutherapist.com, and there's a contact link on there. You can send me an email that way.
Cool.
And I'll get back to
Again,
you.
guys, if you work with them, good stuff. I get no cut of it or anything like that. It's one of those things where I know so many people that are banged up in jiu-jitsu and they don't address it. And, just because you're older doesn't mean you have to be broken.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of things you can do to fix it, and you don't have to be, and I'm not. And I've been training for 20 plus years and probably put way more grappling mileage than anybody here listening. Not saying that for everybody. Some of you guys might have me beat, but I imagine that for 99% of the people listening to this podcast, I've probably put more mat hours on my body than you have over the years. And again, my body's still together, and I think a big part of that is figuring out how my body is messed up so that I can address those problems and sort of maintain it. Think of it as maintenance. It's like eventually your body becomes like an old rickety car, and you just know that every Thursday you got to tap the oil or top the oil off. Kind of happens with your body. You just got to know your ins and outs, and having an expert do that would be very helpful. So, with all that said, guys, let's get into this podcast and talk about 12 things I'm thankful for. All right, guys. So let's get into these 12 ideas, these 12 things that I'm thankful for as we move out of the Thanksgiving holiday and into Christmas time and things like that. In a time to where we kind of we look back at everything, and you can kind of show you can be grateful for what you have. Right? It's important. Some of these are going to maybe sound like you shouldn't be grateful for them, but I'll explain why I'm grateful for them. The first thing is that I'm grateful for and thankful for my lack of talent. Or not most, but many people are born with these like natural gifts and abilities. I was never hindered with such impediments. I say this because like I've watched people come in who have natural physical gifts, right? Natural, like, just God-given gifts to something like athletics, for instance, especially like in BJJ. And a lot of times they struggle because their gifts give them a boost in the beginning. But then when the hard work is required, they start to struggle, right? With me, from everything that I've done, from wrestling to jiu-jitsu to, the stuff I do in business, I mean, anything and everything that I've ever done, writing, all the stuff that I do, none of it came particularly easy. And I was always terrible at it in the beginning. Like nobody ever looked at me and saw like a rising star or some future successful champion at anything. I never had that. I remember when I would be on the mats early on in wrestling and jiu-jitsu and everything else, like all the guys I would come in with, there were, the coaches would always be fixated on the other guys because I wasn't that guy. I wasn't the standout in the beginning. Now, even though I don't have, this natural talent, what I do have is highly developed skills, and I had those because I developed the ability to work hard. So when you go into everything and you just suck at everything to begin with, you either develop the ability to work hard and just put your nose down to the grinder, or you just quit. Obviously, I didn't quit. So that's how I got better at things. And so, these days, again, I say I don't have natural talent. What I have is highly developed skills. And again, this comes from going into things kind of expecting things to be tough, difficult, and sort of looking at it as, yeah, it's hard. It always is. What am I going to do? So what? Right. And so that's one thing I'm thankful for Just as I was going through this was originally an email, and that's one of the things that I'm thankful for is my lack of talent and natural God-given ability. I don't have much.
I mean, it's helpful, obviously, if you're not necessarily, if you have an expectation, you're like, hey, I'm expecting that I might struggle with this. There's a certain price of admission, essentially.
Mhm.
Like I know I'm gonna have to pay a certain amount of time, effort, whatever. I think the advantage is, you're discouraged less because you
Mhm.
kind of have some expectations. Um, but on the other hand, you did have a little bit of expectations. And remember you talking about actually having some skill in wrestling, right? Having some
Right.
experience wrestling, going to jiu-jitsu and being like, man, I'm gonna crush everybody, and then having a little bit of realization, kind of reality check there, and that, but still having the capacity to work hard. Like you probably have to work hard at wrestling to get decent at it, right? So you kind of knew, hey, this is kind of the price of admission. So I think having an expectation, maybe it didn't quite align when you started jujitsu, but then
Sure.
knowing you're going to need to probably work at it, I think that's a great thing. I
Well,
I don't know if like for me personally, I didn't know, like I've never done really martial arts in any real capacity. I only played like team sports, so I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be good at this at all. I thought I was fairly athletic, but I think I caught on decently okay.
mhm.
But again, I just kind of, I don't know. I never expected to. I don't know. I didn't really have a lot of expectations getting into jujitsu. Like, especially at the time, it was more like I'm just gonna do this thing because I like the UFC and it seems kind of cool, and I want to be able to defend myself a little bit. And never even thought like a blue belt was going to be a possibility, or a purple or anything beyond that. So I just kind of did it just to do it. Um, didn't really have a lot of expectations, so I don't know if that was helpful or not. Just to keep showing up and get my ass
I
kicked a
think
little.
expectations, the lack of, is generally a good thing because
Mm,
expectations tend to make you pretty fragile. If you go into something expecting an outcome to happen or getting really attached to a particular outcome, it's generally a hindrance more than it
mm.
is a blessing, right?
Yeah. Do you think that maybe having low expectations, like, I don't know, this may be a tricky question. Like somebody that's never been good at something, right? And you
Mhm.
start jujitsu, do you like, well, I'm just never going to be good at this thing. But if you stick with it, I mean, there is people we see that kind of turn the corner, and we don't know what
Mhm.
that is, but they kind of suck. I mean, they don't suck. They're just not very good, not super talented, not super athletic, aren't quite catching on. And all of a sudden, they kind of turn the corner and they start competing and they get a little bit of confidence. I mean, I don't know.
Well, sure, but, the thing is it's not about that you suck and that you're always going to suck. It's just here's an example. The other day, Luca, he's, my son, is at the breakfast table. We're having breakfast together, and he looks at me and Jess and goes, "I spy with my little eye something blue." And he's staring at his blue water bottle. Now, he said that as clear as day. And we don't really play that game with him very often. So it was kind of a
Mhm.
surprise. He's never really said that sentence together. And it was a pretty good sentence for a, 2.5-year-old.
Mhm.
So me and Jess look at each other like, WTF? Like, dude,
Mhm.
what was that? Right? And, the thing that I've noticed about Luca is that he periodically has these little level ups. And like any body that grew up gaming, right? You know what a level up is, right? Like your character acquires some skills and then they get the level up, and then sort of in an instant, you press a couple buttons and all of a sudden your character is stronger, they have new abilities, yada yada, so forth. Sometimes that's how it is with Luca. Like literally be like overnight, all of a sudden he like picks up new words. Or I remember last year was really apparent. I would go for a trip for a weekend and I'd come back and he would all of a sudden have new words that he couldn't even close to say the time before. And so, the thing that a lot of times is very hard for people in jiu-jitsu or for people in grappling who are the uninitiated is that these level ups in your game that you're talking about where things start to click and you start to figure it out, they don't come in this nice, predictable, linear sort of way. It's not a step by step kind of thing. It's this up and down roller coaster that some eventually jumps. And, most of the time people experience the progress in like messy failure, followed by all of a sudden they get a jump in their game. A lot of the books that talk about that I've read that discuss like deep learning talk about this, that counterintuitively when when we seem like we're really getting something, we think that that's where deep learning is. We're really learning it, but learning is generally a difficult thing, and it's challenging, and it's messy, and it's all over the place, and then it isn't. And that's
Mhm.
kind of what happens. And so I think for me getting into jiu-jitsu, kind of going back to it to string this together, I initially came in and thought I was going to be good. The very first day, I quickly realized that that wasn't going to be the case. I got smashed by everybody and realized that it's basically wrestling all over again, right?
Hmm.
And in wrestling, I remember my coach telling us this. He's like, listen, you guys are going to train, and someday there's going to be a light bulb moment, and you don't know what's going to, how it happened or how to explain it, but all of a sudden you got better. And that's exactly how my jiu-jitsu's been. And it's happened so many times that it's almost predictable. Like, I kind of know that this is going to happen. I train, I do situational rolling, I focus on it, and so forth, and then within some weeks, all of a sudden, I'm going to notice a jump in my game in that particular area that I'm focused on. And so you can have, standards and focusing on like what you can control and the way that you approach your training and so forth. You just don't want to put the expectation of how this is all supposed to go, because that's the part you don't control. You can control the effort you put in, you can control what you're focused on, but you can't control if your training partner's doing really well that day, or if maybe for some reason you just haven't done enough, had enough time in position with a technique. You just have to put in your time. And so I always say, like, low expectations and high standards for what you can control in the way that you put yourself forward, just low expectations on how it's supposed to go. Don't come into this with this bar of I'm supposed to be this or that, and you focus more on what you're supposed to do to make a good positive outcome happen. But you don't get too attached to it.
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah. And you've also had that experience, like I said, you got good at something and then you saw that maybe you're not as good as you thought you were going to be. And then you got back to it and you knew what the process was, which is very helpful.
Here's another thing I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that I grew up first world poor. So like years ago, I used to say that I was poor, right? That I grew up poor. But then when you travel to countries where you see people living on dirt floors, and with like, houses in tropical areas with no air conditioning and things like that, and people that are scraping by selling fruit on the beach, you realize, hey, if you're in America and you have we had a roof over our head, we had food in our bellies, and when you actually I remember Thomas Sowell talking about this, when you compare the square footage that is allotted to, say, poor people in the United States, like, we live like better than pretty much most of the world, right? Like, I mean, even as a poor family, we had Section 8 homes, food stamps, and so forth. But like, I had a room, you know what I mean? So like, I didn't have much in the room. I didn't have a lot of cool stuff, but like, I had a room and I had some different things. But we grew up poor, right? And growing up like that really gives you an appreciation for a lot of the smaller things. And it's also helped keep me free from diving into excessive debt to keep up with the Joneses and thinking that like an expensive car or some massive home is going to bring me happiness. Like, I remember talking to one of the guys who's in real estate agent, and he was telling me about someone who recently bought a home, and the home is almost 5,000 square feet, and it's for a woman and like her one kid and a dog.
Mm.
And you're like, that is a massive freaking home for like two people and a dog, right? Like, I mean, and I'm not saying that maybe there's a reason they have it, but a lot of times it's like people get into this, they buy all this stuff because they think that somehow that's going to fill some void in them.
Yeah.
And when you grow up with not a lot of stuff, you realize that, like, no, that's not that. Like, if you got a void in you, the void has something to do with not like the material stuff. That's kind of what's being fed to you. It's something deeper than that. Now, there's nothing wrong with having nice stuff if you want it, as long as it doesn't take away from the stuff that's actually important to you, right? And a lot of times for most people, if you were to ask them, having to work extra hours, having to be stressed out to afford expensive stuff probably isn't an ideal situation for them, opposed to spending more time with their family, being able to be more relaxed in their day-to-day life, and being able to have more free time to do what they want to do, right? So I'm thankful I grew up first world poor.
Yeah. You don't, I think when you don't have a lot, you don't need a lot in some ways. Like you are like, I can be really happy with very little,
Yeah.
and,
Well, you grew up, obviously you guys were refugees, so
yeah,
like, you know that you could have a good experience, and that like life could not be all that. I mean, again, you want to give your kids plenty, right? But at the
right.
same time, that you can still have a lot of happiness with not a lot of material possessions.
Sure. Like, and I think, my parents, obviously, we came from Russia and like they lived very frugally there. And when we came here, you don't just change that up. you continue to live in a frugal manner, and in some ways that's good, in some ways it's not. I mean, if you got a little bit of money, it's okay to enjoy yourself a little bit, and
Right.
but with within reason. But I think my family kind of lived in with the same mindset of like, hey, we don't have hardly anything, even though
Mhm.
there's more opportunity here in the US. And but I think that's what helped them kind of become successful, in my opinion. They able to retire and things like that and I'd say live the American dream, which is, I think, still a thing that's possible. But
100%.
I didn't have a whole lot. Like, we had a Nintendo and this and that, but when we got that Nintendo, damn, we were happy. I
Yeah,
remember my
buddy.
brother getting a Nintendo, an NES system, man. I've never seen him so happy. And it was like, it was pretty cool to get that. Like, so you appreciate things. I think when you don't have a lot, when you do get something, you're more appreciative of it. But you also know that you can survive with a lot less.
Mhm.
And my goal was, like, when I had kids, is like to give them more than I had. And sometimes I'm like, man, am I spoiling them too much? Are they
Mhm.
not understanding, that some of the struggles like my parents went through? And I wouldn't say I struggle. I had every opportunity to be successful. I took advantage of a lot of those things. I didn't feel like I had the luxury to screw off a little bit, So I kind of try to take the most advantage I could. Same thing for you, right? Like you had to make your own way in a lot of ways. Like, you didn't have a family with a ton of money. It's like, when you had an opportunity, you made the most of it. I think
Yeah.
that's make the most of what you have. And I think you can find happiness and probably be successful in some capacity.
Yeah, it makes you hungry.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, as a parent, you're like, you see the benefits of having gone through that, and so you're kind of worried. You don't want to go too soft on the kids, but at the same time, you know, you don't want your kids to go without either, right? So it's try to find
Right.
that
E
balance, I
That's
suppose.
a tough balance because I don't want my kids to struggle, but I think they need to struggle and they need
Mhm.
to have some challenges. And sometimes I'm very quick to, if they want something, and, I give in a little bit more than I probably should,
Sure.
which is on me because I don't want them to struggle, but I know struggling is really important. It's an important thing. I think you got to be grateful for the ability to struggle and being able to struggle and overcome it. I think it's a powerful tool to have.
Yeah. And speaking of struggle, I am thankful for my mother. So to kind of give you guys a little bit of backstory, when I was younger, I watched my mom, basically go from a struggling alcoholic who had her kids taken away to essentially quitting alcohol cold turkey because she said God told her to. Right? She was basically said she was driving. We were having this conversation before she died of cancer in 2011. I remember we were driving to the place to do the radiation treatment, and she said that it was like we were at a stoplight. She was like, "This is the stoplight where God told me to stop drinking." And within a short time, she pretty much had her life together. She owned a home. She had a stable relationship with a guy. She took a yearly vacation where she relaxed on the beach. And, whether it was divine intervention or just good old fashioned determination, maybe a little bit of both,
Yeah.
it was a great lesson to see, right? Because as a young kid, I got to see my mom struggling, right? Because there was one point where, I remember it was me, my two sisters, and my mom living in a one-bedroom apartment. They slept on the bed. I would sleep in a reclining chair, and I have very vivid images of walking into the kitchen and just seeing my mom like with papers strung out on the kitchen table and crying. And I have no idea what she's crying about. I imagine it was bills and just being overwhelmed by everything she was doing.
Sure.
Two, fast forward, I saw her dig herself out of that hole, and it's a great example of the, like, no matter how bad it gets, you're rarely out of the fight if you choose to fight back, right? Um, and you see this all the time, even when we're grappling, right? Like there's plenty of matches where you'll see someone rally back and win. Someone's on the mats and they're getting beat, they're getting smashed, whatever, and then all of a sudden they escape out of the position. The other person's spent and they're exhausted, and they come back and they, come back to win the match. You see this in MMA as well, and boxing and everything else.
Mhm.
And I just thought it was a fantastic lesson to see someone real time that that you were attached to dig themselves out of a hole, and you couldn't even understand really what was going on until later on as an adult. And then when you were an
Yeah.
adult, you could really appreciate for how damn difficult that is, because you know alcohol consumes
Yeah.
their lives, right? Like a lot of people just they never get off of it, and she basically in an instant decided, no, this is it.
That resilience is something to, it's pretty amazing. Just being just being having that perspective of not giving up on yourself, and not kind of like giving up on to based on the circumstances you have and you're dealt with. And I can't even imagine having 3 kids and being a single parent, right? Like,
Mhm.
whoa. I mean, shit, it's hard enough. I have a great relationship with my wife, and we both work, and we're both supportive of each other, and we have 2 kids. But man,
Well, and
it's
imagine then
so
being in, like, a
hard.
one-bedroom apartment too,
Yeah,
right?
you
Like,
don't have
with, like,
space for
3
yourself.
kids. Yeah.
Right. And man, and having a substance abuse problem, right? Where you're fighting off, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of demons, right? Like that's a whole that's a whole thing in all of itself, climbing out of that hole. But I mean, kudos to your mom, man. That's amazing. She was able to do that and set such a good example. Um, I was fortunate to have, 2 supportive parents.
Mhm.
That obviously I felt a lot of love from them, and they were there. Again, they weren't big risk takers. I
Yeah.
think, they were always like very conservative in a lot of ways. Like I didn't take a lot of risks as a kid or have big, huge dreams. It was more like do these specific things that are very safe. Um, but it was great having supportive parents, and fortunate to see their resilience, coming to a country and not being able to speak the language, and basically their education being null and void because it doesn't, transfer to the States. They have to kind of start from the bottom, which was it's almost like starting their lives over in their late 30s,
Right.
which is pretty cool to see. But again, it's a point of resilience too, being able to pick everything up and leave and start over. And your
Oh, it's
mom
huge,
kind
dude.
of,
To go into a country where, like,
yeah,
it's not your native language,
sure,
you're in your late 30s, you have
yeah,
kids,
yeah,
right? And you're taking a chance to go do this thing, and I remember you telling me about your
yeah,
dad, like, who, basically would do all these different jobs and work his face off
yeah,
because, he's just trying to get a chance,
yeah, yeah.
right?
He said there was like I don't know who one of his first jobs, like they were digging. I don't know if they were digging holes or what they were doing, something like electrical work or something, and it started raining, and they were sending everybody home, and he wouldn't leave. He's like, "Give me something to do. Like,
Yeah.
let me do something. I can do something. I'm not leaving." Essentially, it's like, hard work and resilience. And I think, the ability to start over. And I think your mom, to her credit, was able to just kind of start over, essentially be like, all right, this is enough, and pick up the pieces and set a great example for you and your sisters. So that's really cool too.
Yeah, it's like you said a bad example, and then you said a good example, and there's a lot to be learned from like the bad examples. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
another thing that I'm thankful for, is my absent father. Right, like as a father now, I have like a great blueprint for what to do because I saw exactly what you don't want to do. Um,
Hmm.
because I got to see like the effects of it. I felt the effects and of a father that just wasn't there. And there's a lesson within that, right? Sometimes watching the mistakes of others and watching what not to do is just as instructive as what to do, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people are telling you what to do, do this, do this, do this. But sometimes knowing like, hey, this is just something you shouldn't do, that's very helpful. And, both my father and then there were a lot of other people in my life early on, like family members who, you know, struggled with substance abuse. My
Hmm.
mom obviously was one of them. My uncle was one of them. I remember my uncle was a brilliant guy. And I remember walking into his home, and this was like the early 90s. And he had a computer where you could type into it and it would like come back and talk to you. Like you could basically, it had like a really primitive script set up to where it could like talk and you would hear this very hello, this,
Hmm.
hello, how are you? This very robotic voice, right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, super cool house, like cool entertainment, like, center with all the radios and big speakers and stuff. I remember watching like a movie there once and it felt like the floor was shaking when the horses were coming in. It was so cool. Come back a year later because he'd gotten addicted to some sort of drug. I don't really know what, but drugs. And he had like a pillow. Like that's it. Everything was gone, sold. He sold everything. Right.
Mm.
And you're like, whoa. So like that's not something I want to do. And like as a father now, like I'm like, like I'm constantly questioning myself, like, and like being sort of critical of how I do things with Lucas sometimes. And like I literally, it's like a match. You know, if maybe he's having a meltdown and I'm trying to calm the situation and I'm trying different techniques and stuff like that, right? Or if I get frustrated sometimes with something that he does, like I'm like, I don't like that I did that. I'm constantly critical of this, but like I know at least if I'm showing up and I'm there and I'm giving him quality time,
Mhm.
and like it's going to be all right. Opposed to like say my father, who just wasn't there, right? I
Right.
didn't even meet him until I was like 6, 7.
Wow.
Um, it's not an ideal situation.
Yeah. I think you're a great dad. I see you interact with Luca. It's awesome to see. And from what I learned as far as being a parent, I think the kids just they desire attention. They just need attention. They need like your focus. So like one of
Mhm.
the things, I've realized like sometimes I'm on my phone too much or I'm not
Yeah.
giving them and they're like, they call me out on their dad,
Oh
get
yeah.
off your phone. Call me out on it, and I think it's a realization. They just need it's just being there for them and supporting them in whatever capacity you can, just being attentive and present, which I think is so hard for us to do. I think because there's so much that's you know thrive like trying to get our attention. All this like social media. We always talk about social media and stuff. For me, it's like there's always so many distractions. It's just like just getting those distractions, letting getting attention to your kids. I think is so important, and I think it works both ways because it's I mean, I think I feel so much better when I'm able to interact with my kids fully focused on
Mhm.
them and what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, this is like why, like, I've talked about it multiple times on the podcast and stuff and in my emails. I have like a phone jail, right?
It's
So this is my office, and phone jail is about, I don't know, like what, 30 feet over that way,
mhm,
like it's over in a corner that's not really in view of where me and Luca might play or in my office. It's just away from everything. So this way, when I'm hanging out with Jess, hanging out with Luca, doing my work, whatever it is, I'm present in that moment with those people.
sure.
Like this morning, it snowed in Louisville, and or it snowed yesterday in Louisville, and so we had all the snow. So we went out sledding. We're out sledding this morning. Phone stays in the house. We're sledding. We're 100% in the moment, sledding for an hour. Um, and though and again, like you said, mentally you feel better, right? And so I think phone jail is a really useful thing for people. If you can do it, find some corner of your home that like you don't really go to all the time, right? And just kind of put your charger there and charge it. And some people will say, oh, emergencies, this or that. And yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of thing there, but for the most part, if someone has like for me, if someone has an emergency that's going to be really important to me, they can either get a hold of our gym manager or they can get a hold of my
Mhm.
wife. You can't get a hold of those two people, it's not a real emergency for me. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's just the way I look at it. And again, I have employees and stuff to deal with. So, most of you guys listening to this, I mean, some of you guys obviously will probably have more responsibility, but most of you guys, probably don't have as many people sort of looking to you for what they need to do or for directions on stuff, or you don't get bombarded with 20 to 50 text messages in a single day that you have to go through, right? And I use text messaging as like a almost like an answering machine, right? It's not, I don't get to it immediately. I get to it when I get to it. Like kind of like how
Yep.
back in the day you have an answering machine and you would get back to it at a certain time of the day. You didn't get to the text message as if it had to be immediate.
Right.
And those things help me out because again, by getting away from the phone and getting away from that constant bombardment, like you said, it allows you to be more present with the people that you're actually with.
Yeah, it's super important. I've wasted more time than I care to admit, scrolling. I think we all have at one point in time, and you feel kind of guilty about it. Like I sometimes feel like, man, I feel bad. Like I just wasted all this time doing
Mhm.
meaningless stuff. So it's just like knowing that feeling. Like I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I'd rather not do that. So it's, for me, it's just like I'm starting to kind of. I have like a box. I'm starting to put like my phone. I come in like I have like a little box that kind of
There you go.
closes. It doesn't lock or anything, but it
Yeah.
closes and boom,
Just
put
out
it
of
in
sight,
there.
out of
And
mind.
yep, yeah, helps.
Another thing I'm thankful for is my wife. So I think most of us would agree with this, having a strong support system. It's critical for basically anything you want to do. And, from the moment me and my wife started dating, she was super supportive of pretty much everything I was trying to do. Here's an example of this and contrasting it. Back in 2009, I actually started trying to do YouTube videos. I loved YouTube. I enjoyed the format. I enjoyed videos, and I was like, well, okay, maybe I'll make some videos and try something. And I remember my very first video that I tried to make was a video of me doing a gi review. I was basically because, for at the time I found that I was looking up gis because, money was tight and I wanted to make sure I got a good gi for me. And so
Mhm.
I realized that there was no gi review videos on a lot of the gis that I had. And I was like, well, maybe I'll share one and kind of tell people about them. And so I started doing this video and I struggled in front of the camera because it's one thing to talk to a human being. And if anybody's ever tried to talk in front of a camera, you might experience this. I've always been a chatty person. I've always been able to speak in front of a group of people, but talking in front of a mechanical eyeball was a bit of a different thing, and it took a while to develop that skill. And so I remember I started making this video in 2009, and I just keep stumbling over my words. And the girl that I was dating at the time, I mean, she starts just laughing, just hysterically laughing. And she's just telling me, "Oh my God, this is so terrible." Da, 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 right. And, I remember like sort of tucking that away and just like, all right, well, I'm not going to do this. I came back and started doing it later again, obviously, at some point. Um, and I remember, my wife was a big proponent of it. So I started doing it. And I remember when I first started making the videos, I had a laptop that was just on the fritz and it would just randomly crap out.
Mm.
It literally would just turn off. I'd be in the middle of editing a video and then pew, it would just turn off. And so she saw that and she went out and gathered some people together in the gym and pulled some money together, and she went and bought a new MacBook for me to edit
Yeah.
videos, right? I didn't tell her to. She just did it on her own accord. And like, again, that's one of those people where, and I remember then I would used to show her videos. Like when I was first getting started, she was my litmus test. I would let her watch a video and I would watch how she watched the video. If she didn't keep attention, if she would get bored and like basically drift off, I would delete the video and redo it because I'm like, well, if I can't keep my wife's attention, I'm not going to be able to keep anybody else's attention because my wife loves me, right? And she wouldn't even know that she was doing it. Like I never told her that I was doing this. I would just let her watch the videos, and I would notice if she started like picking up her phone or if she started like messing with something else, or if she watched the video all the way through. And so she was incredibly supportive of doing that, like helping me out with all that stuff. And with everything that I've done, she's always been supportive. And I think that, she's one of the big reasons I've been successful in the last 10 years is because I actually had someone that's in my corner being super supportive. Basically, no matter what, success or fail, she's always been there in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's having a partner that's like on your side. I mean, it's so amazing. It's such an important thing to be successful. Like I remember when I was like working, full time, and I was like, I want to go part time and start my own practice. I want to start my own, see my own people, see my jujitsu people that I feel like I can really help do some online content. She was the same way. I mean, she's like, she would be really supportive of me, and yeah, and in some aspects, she'd have to work a little harder, right? Because I wasn't maybe making as much money initially, right? I was having to. There's a growth phase to it where things aren't quite progressing as you like. So it takes some time to get some traction. So I think it was, yeah, having somebody that supports you, but also you support them and you want to support them. Like she's got her own, massage business
Mhm.
and practice, and she's very successful and she does a great job. And like, she loves to learn. So she goes and does different trainings. I'm happy that I can support her. And, I'm like, hey, I'm getting ready for this jujitsu tournament. It's like, all right, I want to be going training a little more. Okay. We got to bend and flex, but we're able to help each other and kind of support each other. It's not always easy, right? It can be a challenge and you got to
Mhm.
give and take a little bit, but I mean, you can't do some of this stuff I've seen, and you've probably seen this more than I have. Like people come in, they have a partner that's like, I don't want you going to jujitsu
Oh, bro.
or a wife, and they're like, and they stop and they fall off.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like someone meeting a girl and you're like, oh, they're gonna be gone. They're out. You almost kind of like sometimes it's gonna happen. They start showing up a little less and then they're gone completely. It's like you want somebody that's like, hey, this is stuff I've been doing. This is what matters to me. I want to keep doing it. And having somebody that supports that's really important.
It's depressing. It's one of these things where, I think about it, like, let's say you and I are going to be together, because let's say, if you're not 19 years old or something, assuming that you're like an older person, maybe like 20s, early 30s, whatever,
Sure.
and you meet someone and you're considering this person to be like the person that you plan to spend the rest of your life with, it's incredibly selfish to like get fixated on, like, oh, you're training an extra day a week or a day a week or something like that. I don't want you to do that. I want you to spend more time with me. You're like, we have the rest of our lives together. But if you give me this time, I'm going to be happier to be with you.
Exactly.
I don't know how it is for everybody, but like for me, it's like you give like I told my wife when we first started dating, I said, listen, I need a big fence. I don't want to be on a leash. I just want a fence. Give me a fenced-in yard. You know what I mean? Like this way, we draw the boundaries. We know we have expectations for each other. I kind of know where your lines are and that sort of thing. But just let me run around. I don't want to feel like a dog on a short leash. I want to feel like I have, some movement to play around in, and I don't feel like I'm being, I think everybody's like that to some degree, right? It's one of the reasons why people hate working in big corporate jobs where they feel like some sort of cog in a machine. They feel like they're a dog on a short leash opposed to being able to be an actual human and have freedom a little bit or some autonomy. And so that was a big thing with Jess. It's like, I need this. And she's always been supportive of that. And when I see guys where they're, or even women when they're dating someone, a significant other, and that person starts to like yank them away from the things that they're enjoying doing, I'm not saying it can't never work, but more often than not, most of the time it doesn't work out. And later on that person comes back to the gym and they usually regret it. They regret the decision to like step away, opposed to like sticking to their guns and saying, hey, let me like keep doing this and, work this thing out. So, speaking of people in the gym, I'm thankful that I'm fortunate for the people in the gym, thankful for the people in the gym, because I'm fortunate to spend my days teaching and training people that I genuinely think are pretty awesome people. I also derive a great amount of purpose by helping other people. I don't know, maybe not everybody's this way, but for me, I believe if you can find a way to serve other people, it fills a void in you that many people experience sort of deep in their soul. Now, a lot of people try to fill it with stuff. We kind of talked about that earlier, right? Material stuff. But when you have people that you're serving, when there's some other mission or purpose that's more than you as a person, I think that's generally a good thing for us as humans. I think it's why people who have like a family, if wife and kids or husband and kids, that kind of thing, you derive a great sense of purpose. Most of the fathers that I know that are good dads, when they had their kids, it was like it unlocked a new basically mode of thinking in them that gave them a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment that they didn't have before, that you can't put a finger on. You can't explain it to someone who hasn't experienced it. And likewise, at least for me, I feel a great sense of purpose from doing the stuff that I do every morning or every day, where you get to train with people and, you get to watch people make positive changes, right? Like one of the big wins for me is like sort of the gym dad recently was we had a member who she came into the gym a year ago, and she was suffering from some trauma that had happened, obviously before she came into the gym, and she would have panic attacks going and rolling on the mats, just shut down. And she'd have to leave, and she would, start, it really would mess her up. And she kept coming, and several of the coaches really helped her out, like Kata and Ryan Peterson. They really went above and beyond the amount that they needed to do, but they helped her out a bunch. And she recently competed about a year, just recently, which has been almost in exactly a year, competed and won a match by submission and took second place in a competition. It was like,
awesome.
That's a huge win, right? And like, it's not a world championship, it's nothing like that, but you watch someone go from, panic attack to all of a sudden you can get out there and roll in the competition with all that energy, right? That's pretty impressive. And we have a lot of people on a weekly basis that are having different wins of their own, and so that's cool to make that impact on someone and see it. For me, that's the drive, right? That's a lot of fun. And so I'm thankful for the people that come into the gym that allow me the enjoyment of being able to do that.
Yeah, the fulfillment of it. Like, I mean, just even in a jiu-jitsu sense, for me, it's like watching some of these I'm one of the coaches at 6 a.m. classes, and then watching some of my guys that, I've really poured some energy into go out there and do really well in a competition, right? Like having that, I was like, man, I feel like I had a piece of that. Like it feels so good to watch their success. Like I'm not winning anything. They're the ones that are out there doing the thing and they're winning and they're accomplishing something. Even when they're not, they're going out there and they're, doing the best they can. They're being good listeners. They're coachable. I think there's so much, like you said, there's so much fulfillment in that. Even physical therapy, right? Like one of the things, like when I'm working with some of my athletes, I'm watching them get out there and do well and actually get back to training because they miss it so much. It's so special, like having them have some confidence back on the mats. It's just, it makes it worth it. You know what I mean? Like, cause people are like, man, I'm so happy to get back out here. I've been off, due to this injury, and just coming back and being able to train again. It's pretty awesome. And it's fulfilling. And it's kind of like, it kind of fills your cup. You know what I mean? It like kind of gives you that energy that you need essentially. And you're doing something you care about. And plus the people at the gym are awesome. We're all there. We all train together. It's just like you have a common goal, like a common bond just by training hard together and just being there. And you get to know people so much deeper beyond just jiu-jitsu. And that's where that community aspect comes in. Right. And so we get together, on the holidays, or, we go out, somebody's leaving the gym. We all try to have dinner together, and just like, because we care about these people and actually miss them probably more than a lot of people we see. So yeah, it's having a gym family and a gym community that's really tight knit and is really, really important. And I think it's what keeps you coming back.
Next one is that I'm thankful that when I was faced with certain traumas as a youngster, I made the decisions I made. So, some of you, if you're new, you maybe don't know this, but there were some issues when I was younger as a kid, like a young kid. I had some sexual abuse as a kid, with an older, I should say, teenager or whatever. And then later on, when I was a teenager, I ended up getting jumped when I was probably about 12 or so by some 16 and 18-year-olds. And, I had a lot of nasty stuff to deal with at that time, right? Like you're dealing with just a lot of nasty stuff. And I'm glad that my reaction was to do things like lift weights, learn how to fight, and develop the skills and the strength to overcome the weakness that I felt as a person, right? They were some of the worst things that I can ever look back happening to me, but then they also led to some of the best parts of my life. I'm probably here where I am right now speaking to you in part because of those things, right? I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for those terrible events. And it's weird how that kind of works, right? And so I'm glad that when faced with those different situations, I didn't fold to them, and I didn't sort of just let them consume me. I simply just found a way to sort of fight back against them. And also had some helpful mentors that helped along the way, helped me sort of do that. I'm glad I had them there.
Yeah, those tough situations to deal with, like real tough. I've had, I would say, like, not directly to me, but my brother had, he got like jumped and got his like orbital broken and stuff like that. And I was kind of like, I didn't realize it. I was probably like 12. I
Yeah,
didn't realize it kind of traumatized me a little. I was kind of scared to walk down the street. I remember
sure.
like just like we'd be walking down the street. I'd be with at a a small group of people, maybe with family, and like a car would drive by, and I'd be like kind of almost like try to hide almost. And I was like, I
Yeah.
didn't realize I was doing it. You didn't think about it, like, and I don't know, just being scared of confrontations and altercations. I was really scared of that stuff, growing up. And I think,
Sure, if you were watching your, like, older brother who's beaten down, broken orbital and stuff like that,
yeah,
probably
yeah,
leads to a certain fear about it.
it definitely does. So like, I, I think like, through jujitsu, I was like, well, I'm not saying I can fight or I can, but if I get in a little bit of a whatever, I think I will have some knowledge of what to do, or at least how to keep myself safe or get away or whatever. And I think, but it does, like, those things kind of motivate you in certain ways. And I don't know, there's probably somewhat of a motivator as a young man, like in my early 20s or mid 20s when I started jujitsu. It was like one of those things is it kind of was in like, I want to know this thing. Like this is kind of something I'm curious about, but
Mhm.
also like having some ability to defend myself in some capacity. It was very, very intriguing. And I think it built a lot of confidence in me in that way. I wasn't as scared. I mean, obviously being older, but I wasn't as scared, going to a place where maybe a bar or something like that, and just feeling like I could protect myself and maybe even my significant other or whoever I was with, just being able to kind of feel a little more safe. So I think it's, yeah, dealing with those things definitely are tough, but they're important,
Mhm.
important to overcome.
Next one is that I'm thankful I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So it may
Mhm.
be a little bit of a nostalgia. There's also some fun words I looked up recently um, about that, right? Let me bring them up real quick. There's one like it's like a Welsh word,
Mhm.
hiraeth. I don't know, probably not saying
Harith?
that right.
Okay.
It's like a homesickness for a home that may not return, or
Huh.
nostalgia for a lost time or past.
Yeah.
There's another one for it's called saudade, which is in Portuguese.
Okay.
Basically means a longing for someone or something you may never see again, like a childhood or whatever. So it could
Yeah.
be all those, right? Um, but I'm thankful for thinking about it because I can't help but look at like some of the 80s and 90s stuff as like a little bit better, right? Sure, we didn't have the conveniences of today, but we had a certain level of excitement. You could go to the
Yeah.
movie store, and it was like a big moment on Friday night. You would get together with friends to play video games and board games and things like that instead of being so disconnected. Um, and we grew up as kids with this time period where we grew up with technology, but we also were separated from it. Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't attached to us at all times. We, weren't constantly bombarded with it. We were able to go out and play outside, and it wasn't considered to be detrimental or unsafe. Like now I listen to parents and, like, they don't want their kids to go outside and play yet for fear of what could happen, but then I look back at my childhood and you're like, it's all we did, right?
Yep.
And crime was actually higher in some cases during the '90s than it was in certain places.
Yep.
Um, but I see, like, sort of a generation now of tablet toddlers and teens craning their neck over their phones, and I'm glad I never grew up with gadgets. I'm glad I never grew up in this environment with this level of convenience to me, like, just given to me. I'm glad that, I grew up at a time where you still were faced with boredom. You had to make your own fun up. You had a little bit of freedom as a kid, because I think all those things were good things. So I'm glad I experienced that, opposed to if I had been born, say, like, now, you know, I don't I can't help but look at that and be like, "Man, we're gonna," with, like, my son, I'm like, "It's gonna be a challenging time because we're gonna have to keep him away from certain things like smartphones and stuff for a long period of time to let his brain develop."
Mhm.
Like me and Justin already talked about it. I don't plan to give him like a smartphone until he's maybe like 15, 16.
Right,
Because
right.
the
Yeah.
the research that's coming out is like that's kind of when their brain can handle it and not go off the rails, so to speak. And we don't give them a tablet really to play with. You go outside and play or play with blocks and stuff. But I'm glad I grew up in that time period before all this technology and these gadgets that steal your attention came into play.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like I think it was an interesting time. Like we would it's funny, like you're talking about the 80s and 90s. Yesterday, me and the kids were watching Home Alone.
Oh, great! We watched it the other night. Great movie.
Yeah, and I was like, man, this is like just it just reminded you of the time a little bit and just reminded you of kind of I remember being a kid watching that movie as well. So it brought me back to like being a kid again
Mhm.
and watching it with them and kind of laughing and just so goofy and
Oh, sure.
but it was just it was a cool time because like you get like you said, there's an excitement. It's like, man, I would wait to get a CD. Like I'm
Yeah.
waiting for a CD to come out and I'd wait till midnight and go to like whatever store that like I remember going like to one of the like stores and getting it or something. Or even, it was just a lot of fun. Going to Friday, go to Blockbuster and be like, oh, I hope they have this movie in stock. You can just stream everything. It just had made
Mhm.
I don't know, made you appreciate like smaller, like the little thing. Now it's like, oh, I can just stream whatever I want whenever I want. It doesn't feel special as unique
Right.
as opposed to waiting for something and then actually getting it and you're like physically have it and get to manipulate it in your hands and actually enjoy it
Well, even
and
think about, like, if you played that video, that's what you were watching. Like, they've done this thing recently where, like, a lot of movies have been dumbed down where the they're creating movie scripts with the understanding that people are probably partly scrolling while they're watching the movie. And
huh.
so, like, the dialogue is being dumbed down to sort of like where the characters will sort of say very obvious things during the movies and shows because they're basically sort of banking on the fact that people aren't actually giving their undivided attention to the show,
Oh wow.
right? When you played a CD or you played a VHS tape or, what you were with that thing, right? And so now we've got more and even think about connections with people, right? You you appreciated your connections with people far more because you weren't talking to them through text messages all the time. And so
Yeah.
when you saw them, there was some excitement to them. When you spoke on the phone, you would speak to that person, like all in, opposed to sending out a bazillion texts a day and talking with people, but never really actually feeling connected to anyone.
Right.
Which is what I talk about this a lot, right? Like, sure, all this stuff is far more convenient and it's technologically advanced, right? But is it better? Because you got to think as humans, we're not our DNA is not set up for all this stuff, right? This is why, like, you could go text your face off and never feel like you've actually connected to a real person, but then you could go and see a friend for, like, 20 minutes and have a good conversation with them, and you leave
Yeah.
feeling kind of like you feel satisfied, you feel good, you feel fulfilled to a degree,
Right.
opposed to, yeah, we can text like, it's like when we were like, when COVID happened and the gym was closed for a little bit, like, we texted, we communicated with people. But then it's like, as soon as we got at the gym and you saw people, I remember the first night we got everybody together to train and we're all talking and hanging out. I was like, "Oh, God, that felt so good." Just
Yeah.
as humans, right? And so, I don't think people really think about that, right? All the technology that's coming out, right? Sure, it's more advanced, more technological, it's more convenient, but is it better? Is it better for you? Is it better for your life? Is it better for your children? Is it better? Is it adding to your life and making it better? Or is it just making it convenient? Because those things aren't necessarily the same, right?
Right.
Convenient doesn't necessarily mean good. We can think about how convenient certain types of foods are, but how detrimental they are to our health. And you can think it's about the same way with a lot of the communication and everything we have today. Another one I'm thankful for is I'm thankful for how lucky I am to be alive at the time I am right now. So, as an avid history student of history, I can't help but look around at the way life has existed for humans for basically forever and not be thankful that, like, hey, I'm right here right now because there's several things I've experienced in my life which probably would have meant I would have died even just 100 years ago. Certain
Mm.
infections, and if I wouldn't have died from them, I would have lost limbs or possibly some of the injuries I would have been crippled for. I would have been like the town cripple, would have had a limp forever, that sort of thing. So, um, I can't help but be like, man, I'm glad that I was here where like modern
Yeah.
medicine and technology could help me um, be cured of those things, right? And even being able to have more choice. There's a going back to the technology. I'm not anti-technology, right? Obviously, there's benefits to it if we control it and use it properly, and it's given me a lot of opportunities because I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that we do right now, this is all technology. This is all of us being able to communicate with each other and share things together. And so thankful I was born at a time right now, and also thankful that I was born in the country that I was born in. Again, that's just dumb luck by my chance. I didn't do anything. Like when people say they're proud to be American, I'm not necessarily proud, but I'm thankful. Because again, I'm proud of the things that I actually do. That's what I'm proud of. I can't take pride in like something I haven't done.
Mm.
I can be thankful for it, and I can take some sense of pride in the thing that other people have done, and like look at those amazing people and the people that built this country and all that stuff. But I'm thankful that I was born here because, um, again, we've got our problems, but at the same time, it's still a place where I grew up as a poor kid with a poor single mom, and the deck was not stacked in my favor, but I was able to learn and have people help me along the way, and all of a sudden, you can change your life. And despite what the news and politicians might portray, America is filled with amazing people. It's not a story that you're going to see on the news. It's not something that you're going to see put on some sort of viral type of video because it's not going to tell a story. But most of the time, when you go out in public, real with real people, generally you see the better sides of us, right? Like the better sides. Like I mean, I just going through an airport, going through the grocery store, you see more good than you see not
Right.
all the time, all the time. You know what I mean? Again, it doesn't stand out like the bad stuff. Um, I'm not saying there's bad stuff, but I'm just saying it's more rare than it isn't. I think generally most Americans are pretty damn cool, and we do a good job. But again, some things we could work on, like our screwed up healthcare system. But it's a good place. Glad I was born here.
Yeah. No, I'm grateful I have, that I get to live here, right? That I get to grow up here and raise my family. Like I think it's a lot better than a lot of places.
Hey,
So
man,
I think like
it's still one of the only places where people are fighting and dying to get here,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
And I think it's definitely I don't know. I think when a lot of we've spoken to some people that are immigrants and things like that that come from Brazil and come here and try to make a life for themselves, and they're very grateful. A lot of the people we have Roosevelt Souza was on. He's talking about you have to sell waters on the side of the road to get
talked to
enough
David
money to
Garmo about his family coming from
yeah.
Iraq and stuff. So
It's wild, man, and I think it is. Yeah, but the problem is that the bad stuff, the bad news is it's what
it sells.
sells and gets attention, and like the good stuff, it's not as exciting, but like that there's so much more good. Regardless of if you're on one side of the fence or the other, like you believe this person's great or this person's the best, whatever it is. It's just like we're all people who all want the same thing. And I think that overall, like there's so much more good than there is bad. And there's so much more, I feel that there's so much more opportunity here than other countries. And that's why people come here.
Yeah. I'm also thankful, kind of going along with that. I'm thankful for all the older men and mentors that helped me out along the way. I can look back at basically about a dozen men who, for one reason or another, came about in my life and sent me on a radically different direction. Now, the different direction didn't really show early on. It's like imagine a boat going down, the river or in the ocean. It's like they just knocked me a couple degrees one direction. But 10 years down the road, that's a big difference, right? And so I met a lot of guys over the years who didn't, I didn't seek out most of them. A couple I did, but I didn't seek most of them out for specifically for mentorship. They were just older guys who saw a young kid trying to do something to help. I never asked them a lot of times for things. They just offered. They left at the chance to help, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And you know, it's just something to keep in mind, right? Like I talk about this sometimes with people. When you go into a place like a jiu-jitsu gym, as an example, it's a place where older people can mix with younger people, and we have this shared common bond there.
Yeah.
And even as an older person, you may not be the killer on the mat who can smash everybody, but you might have some useful experience. You might have learned a couple things if you're a little bit older, right? And you might see that sometimes those younger people are willing to listen. Not all of them, of course, but some of them will. I mean, that was for me. Several of my mentors were older guys that were on the mats who like saw me doing. I remember one guy in particular, Al. He saw me on the mats, or before we got on the mats, I was reading a book on investing. He just so happened to be a real estate investor. He owned several businesses and things like that. And he's like talking to me about it. He also grew up, he's self-made, grew up poor. And so he just started taking me to like, hey, let me go get you lunch. Let me show you some stuff. And he would show me houses he bought, how much he bought them for, what he sold them for. He showed me a couple of his businesses. And I remember he used to like go out to he owns a couple of Subways. And I would go out there and like fix his technical stuff, like his computers there. And so, you know, again, he just helped out, and that gave me a different perspective because I think that's sometimes the benefit you get from people is not necessarily just the lessons that they give and everything else, but like the proximity of being close to them and seeing how they do things. That in itself can be pretty changing. I know that even me, like when I went down to train and like learn some jiu-jitsu from Sean Hammonds, my coach, right? That dude changed my jiu-jitsu around in a huge way, both with some of the techniques that he showed, but also just being in proximity to and seeing how he did things. I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to create this. And I was watching him like a hawk and seeing how he did things.
Yeah.
I was learning lots just from being around him. And I think sometimes that's the beautiful thing about when you can find a mentor of sorts, you can learn a lot from him just by being around them. It doesn't have to be things that are spoken.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I've learned so much honestly from you, like on the side of like, creating a business, right? Creating content, some ideas and like just working together, just how to make things grow. Cause you've done so much in your, in your kind of path, like figuring out what works and what doesn't, and how to kind of, the importance of like, hey, you should do these things to help grow attention, or even just like, attract the people that you feel like would be a good fit for what you do, right? So it's really important. Like, I mean, having, especially, you said kind of, you grew up without a lot of like father. You had some men in your life that were like your grandfather, you said, was a pretty big influence, but just having like male role models in some ways, people that like were men that did things. I think it's really important for a young man to kind of see that,
Well, it's huge because,
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a man? Like it's a very it's a
Yeah.
very hard thing to pin down. And so usually we look around as young men, we look around at the other men around us and we say, "Oh, that's what we're supposed to do."
Yeah.
And if the men around you are a bunch of dirt balls, there's a good chance you can be a dirt ball. But
Yeah.
if you look around and you see men that are good men that are doing things that are, you know, supporting their families, they're building businesses, they're serving other people, they're
Yeah.
taking care of their health, you know, s- they're doing good stuff with their lives, then you go, "Oh, this is probably what I should be doing." And kind of going back to it, I had a beautiful ability to sort of see contrast where I saw what people did when they got into drugs and crime and things like that. And then I also saw men who, their lives would not impress anybody. They wouldn't be on Instagram flexing or whatever. They were living a very normal, uninspiring life to many, but at the same
Mhm.
time, they raised their children, they took care of their family, they spent quality time with their family, sometimes even with me, with this person I'm thinking about. And you look back at that and you're like, that's a life well lived.
Yeah.
Even if it's not gonna be, like, super cool, they're not driving a Lambo or a Ferrari or something, right?
Yeah.
And so I had the ability to contrast these and look at these things and go, "Huh, okay, cool." Like, you get to see those things and you get to see, like, well, what do you want? Do you wanna go this direction or do you wanna go to this direction? Because you
Yeah.
see what's gonna happen if you go that way, and you see what's gonna happen if you go that way. So it's like, even if you really push hard and, you're doing this stuff, even if you fall a little short, there's still a lot of cool stuff that can happen, in a and I don't wanna say uninspiring, but just like a very basic, normal existence,
Mhm.
there's so much of the social media stuff is about this. I try not to, take part in it, but you see so many people where they're putting on this front, this lifestyle
Yeah.
that they live,
Yeah.
right? And it's nonsense. So again, being able to see that contrast of have those, that it was really useful.
Yeah.
And, last one, guys, I'm thankful for you guys listening. A lot of you guys have been with us for many years, listening to us on the podcast. Many of you guys are my students who listen to me because I know sometimes, like the students at the gym, they'll come up and reference the podcast. Hey, you were
Yeah.
talking to so and so or whatever. Um, so we appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate you guys who have joined the Patreon to support the podcast. Appreciate you guys that joined my email newsletter, the Chew Crew, and appreciate you guys for the thousands of you that join every single week to listen to a podcast with us. And yeah, that's my 12 things I could go on for hours, of course, but those are 12 things I'm thankful for this year. That'll hopefully maybe give you guys a couple ideas to chew on. Eugene, what do you want to throw in?
Man, yeah, well said. I'm thankful for all, like, as far as the podcast and the Patreon and stuff, like everybody that listens and sends in questions and like s- you know s- makes comments and screenshots, like, man, this was a great podcast. It just means a lot. I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for all my clients that I get to work with. I get to help out, get back to training, get back to jujitsu, and yeah, it's awesome. It's been awesome. It's kind of crazy to think about. I get to do this. Um, that is something I get to do, and it's like part of like just get to meet. And thankful for our guests that we've had,
Mhm.
as well. Like, it's people spending time with us and sharing their knowledge and kind of what's helped their path and made them kind of excel in what they do. So it's been cool, man. It's been really awesome, and I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed you guys supporting us. And it means a lot.
All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast, got something from it, maybe had a couple ideas to chew on. Maybe you just felt a little bit more connected to the Chewster because you had a dysfunctional family or an absent father or whatever. I know that when I send those emails out that kind of stuff in my email, a lot of people respond to those with like, "Hey, that stuff's happened to me."
Mhm.
I remember last year in particular, I mentioned the sexual trauma that I had, and I had several guys talk about it. Like they were like, "Man, I've had this happen to me, and it's like something I don't I can't talk about." Like one guy was even he'd been married and he'd never brought it up to his wife, because he didn't want to seem weak about it, right?
Mm.
And I think that you take power in owning those things, because
Yeah.
you try to hide them away, they have power over you. Whereas when you take the skeletons out of your closet, you make them dance for you and basically own those experiences, like, you take control of them, you know?
Yeah.
So,
For sure, man.
guys, with that said, thank you for being here. Thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Athletic, THC, and cannabinoid mints. If you guys wanna check them out, they're a microdose THC mint with about 2 milligrams of THC along with other cannabinoids to help support you in whatever you're doing. If you guys wanna check out their website, get more details, and save 10% off the order, go to athletic, ATHLETHC.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu10, CHEWJITSU 10 for 10% off the order. Big thanks to our buddies over at Epic Roll, epicrollbjj.com. Look on their website, browse around, find something you like, a gi, a rash guard, some shorts, maybe a t-shirt. And if you want to save 20%, use the promo code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys want to check out one of our longtime sponsors, Charlotte's Web, whether you want to get CBD, a CBN supplement to support your sleep, or maybe a functional mushroom product like a lion's mane or a reishi or something to that degree, you can check out their website at charlottesweb.com. And the promo code is Jujitsu30 for a 30% off coupon on your order at checkout. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can roll on over to the website at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. By the way, for all our Patreon listeners, we appreciate you and thank you for your long-time support. And if you guys want to get access to the library of content that they have, as well as some of the other perks, you can check those out at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you would like to get my daily email that I send out, you can check it out at chewjitsu.net/join. And when you join up, let me actually see. I wonder if that thing's still active. It may have went down. I had some software. I say that now. But if you guys want to go to that website, jujitsu.net/join, you can get access to a free guide they give away called Focus Jiu-Jitsu. It has a video version of it plus a PDF. And then after that, you then get access to my daily email and you can unsubscribe at any time. And guys, I think that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you guys. I'm thankful for you. Well, we hope you had a good Thanksgiving if you're in the United States, and hope you guys are having a good time in in December. And talk to you next time.